Hello, lovely podcast people. I've just come in on a Monday morning, and any of you who follow me on Instagram and watch my stories will know there's no heating, at least in the extension part of the building where it's the wet system. Knowledge, technical jargon, basically central heating and not air conditioned. Anyway, so it's cold, which is why when this eventually goes on YouTube and Facebook as a video, I'm wearing a scarf. The topic today is not something I feel hugely qualified to speak about, but who is? There are actually some people. And it's come from someone DMing me. They just found me yesterday. They started binging on all my podcasts, and they've previously had huge success with Weight Watchers with regards to the amount of weight they lost. Now they've put weight back on, and they have a horrific relationship with food. And she's it's been like an awakening to hear lots of the content that some of you will have heard me speak about before. All sorts of the different things that, reasons I started the podcast. Not necessarily to talk about specific research papers, but talking about some of the realities of the lifestyle that, I don't know if there's a good way of putting it. Some of the issues that people face when dieting, whether that's being able to get to their goal weight or issues that they end up giving themselves with regards to poorer relationship with food and those kind of things. Anyway, she sent me a message today and she just said, thanks so much. I've, been listening and binging more and more and more. And I hope that I can now start to kind of correct my relationship with food. I see where I've gone wrong with certain things, this, that, and the other. And she finished by saying, I hope I can message you one day having reached my goal weight, reached the weight where I'll be happy and something or other. And it was just the happy thing that stood out to me. And I just said, can I just say one thing back? I really hope that you reach a place where you are happy before that goal weight. And it just popped into my head. This is probably going to be a short episode because I don't have a great deal to say on it. And I hope it's just that reminder of stuff that I've said before. I don't like feeling like a broken record, but some things you need to say over and over again, and people hear them on different days and they mean much more on that day. And I don't think this can be said enough, that reaching a goal weight won't make you happy. I've talked about differentials before. You can be, let's talk about body shape or body weight or the best shape of your life, that kind of thing. You can be the best, and let's call the best shape of your life 10 and the worst shape of your life 0. These are all subjective based on your own rating, no one else's. If you are at a 10, and this is actually something that any of you who have done photo shoots, bodybuilding competitions, that kind of jazz, will understand. You look your quote-unquote best on show day, and a month later, 8 weeks later, you're at 8, 7, 6 out of 10 compared to how you felt you looked on that day. And you can often feel a bit crap. It's the differential. It's the -4. It's the movement. It's the vector, the direction of where your physique is going. For instance, you've got more food in you, your training's going better, but you look at yourself in the mirror and go, oh, wish I had abs like that again, or whatever you aspire to. flip it on its head. When you started preparing for that show, you started at a 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. Or a 0. You know, if you went from the worst shape of your life, it was your first bodybuilding competition. You know, I'm using bodybuilding competition, which is probably a bad idea because it kind of alienates a subset of individuals. But I'm just talking about a thing that is just easily distinguished in terms of time periods. It can be anything. It can be this lady's last day at Weight Watchers, for instance, where she was however many stone lighter than when she started, whatever. You start at 0 or 2, but the movement, you move from a 2 to a 4 to a 6, and you're back at that 6 that I just described, but you're on top of the world and you feel great. But your physique is exactly the same at a 6. And this is where enjoying the process is important. And I talk about that in all different aspects of life, business, being a big one that I've had to learn myself. That actually the destination is pretty underwhelming. It's the process that you really want to enjoy and savor. So I've got a key thing I want to say in this podcast, and it'll be essentially what I say at the end. But this differential is something that's worth paying attention to. And it's worth understanding that sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other and being committed to a goal and just practicing like self-care or whatever, often that's what's making you feel better. It's the process of self-improvement. It's where your head is at during that. And this is why I talk about acceptance so much. Accept. I want to emphasize the word I'm saying. Accept that during certain times you won't have this drive and motivation and headspace and time to put everything into your exercise routine, the exercise that you love, eating the way that you feel your best and nourish yourself. And you can diet from a good place. You can want to change your body from a good place. And often it's just that fact that you're in that good place where you can do the things that you enjoy that are great. It's not the fact that you're losing weight or building muscle or doing whatever it is, getting stronger. So the point being is, if you are in your best shape, you won't necessarily be happy for a multitude of reasons. But again, if you go from a 10 to a 9, it's the fact that you're moving in that direction is going to be the thing that you're unhappy about. It's whatever's happening in your life. It's that you're not motivated. You're in great shape, but you're not seeing progress, or you're not enjoying your training at that time. You've overtrained yourself, whatever. You're in your best shape, but you are, to be in that shape, and this is the crux of this podcast really, to be in that shape, you're making certain sacrifices. And your best shape may be a very moderate goal. And therefore you're not making that many sacrifices. And therefore, fantastic if you're happy there. And some people have this goal in mind of this certain body shape or size or whatever. And to get there, a lot of sacrifices in the rest of their life are necessary. And so with this woman, and with some of you listening, and those of you who even coaches can maybe point clients to this, for them to think about stuff and maybe have these discussions with them of if they can get to a happy headspace before they get to their goal. if they can detach happiness from how they look as much as possible. And this is when I say that I'm not an expert, because I'm not going to quote studies on this specifically or anything like that, and I'm not going to give you exact tools on how to do that, although obviously I have recorded these previous podcasts on gratitude and happiness, and they're worth a listen, I think, based on the feedback I've got anyway. So if you can get to that happy headspace ahead of time, you can then have a new discussion with yourself as to whether the goal you have previously set when maybe you were more unhappy is really what you need. And actually you're enjoying your training. You can maybe stop focusing so heavily on, I'm going to specify weight loss or fat loss as a goal, being overly specific with your food, and start to learn to live. I talk about coaching clients to live, teaching yourself to live, not having to count calories, not having to be mega specific with your food. And for some people, doing that gets them to their goal quicker because it keeps them away from the danger zone of disordered eating patterns, binges, etc., which completely undermine progress and your mental health. So this is what I said to that lady. I hope you can get to that place of happiness before that. Detach a way that you look, because looking a certain way doesn't make you happy. And you can find that happiness in the process because you are treating your body the way you think it wants to be treated. You're giving it food, you're nourishing it, you're not looking to food to make you happier. You know that eating highly palatable food gives us that reward, that hedonic reward. But it doesn't maybe fill the gap that we're trying to fill necessarily, if there are other areas of unhappiness. So, if you can get back to that place of happiness in yourself, reassess the goal, and understand the sacrifices that you're going to have to make to get there. And for some people, it's a bit like, this is something that maybe some of the anti-diet crowd need to hear more and to ponder themselves. Those people have had poor experiences and have just gone completely the other way, and don't see the silliness in that going to extremes. Is that sometimes getting into that shape is an endeavour like running a marathon. People train for a marathon and then never get that fit again, but it was a huge achievement. Stepping on a bodybuilding stage, getting in the best shape of your life for a photo shoot is a huge achievement for some people. Now, there is also something that coaches should talk about, and it's the fact that once you've had that, your differential and your point of reference is shifted that way. It's like having highs and lows in your life. If it's the factor of, like, you know, someone being super famous and super adored and then becoming irrelevant, and actually, oh my goodness, I feel really depressed because I'm irrelevant compared to how I was then. Or people take drugs, they're in this euphoric state, but then reality becomes a shade of grey because of that. So there are these little risks that people need to bear in mind and be aware of, and be, you know, sometimes just being aware that that will happen is, oh, okay, this is normal. Okay, cool, I get that. Right. And they can have acceptance about this is a normal way to feel. So, you can have that discussion with yourself. You can have that discussion that you're doing it from a place of happiness. And like I said before, people shouldn't be dieting unless it's an exciting endeavor. Don't hate yourself into change. It doesn't work. You can't guilt yourself into change. It's doing it from a positive, proactive, empowered standpoint. There will be restrictions that you place on them. What's your perception of that restriction? This is cool. It's going to change me. I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying cooking in this different way. I'm enjoying the differences in my training because of it, etc. So anyway, that's it really. Just a reminder that looking a certain way doesn't lead to happiness. And that focusing on too much on that will probably make you more unhappy. Getting to a point where you can accept your body how it is. You can love your body at every size. You can love yourself at any size and how you look in the mirror. And you can let other people's opinion of you wash over, and previous nasty comments, let yourself heal from them. But this stuff, it's super important, and it's not discussed enough in the fitness industry. I've just thought of something else for a future podcast, and it has been on my mind anyway. I recently recorded the stuff about the anti-diet movement and this, that and the other. And I want to record a podcast specifically for those who are not in the anti-diet realm and find themselves being triggered by those people and wanting to get into arguments and feeling almost judged when the anti-diet crowd talk about the fact that dieting is bad for people. And it's just made me think about doing this podcast of talking about the flip side, talking about the dangers of dieting. Anyway, so just dangers of dieting, because these are essentially inherent, and I think that's the problem is, if you just diet in the right way, if you just do my boot camp where we promote a healthy relationship with food, and we don't demonize any food, and we just count calories, but it's really flexible and blah blah blah, there's no risk. There is, and I think that's the problem, that if you just do it in the right way and then you can keep the weight off, and no, that's not the case. That scenario doesn't exist perfectly. So anyway, interested in your feedback on this podcast. It's a shorter one, I imagine, and I hope it's not been particularly upbeat, it's not been funny, but I hope it's at least encouraging or provides just an opportunity to reflect on your mentality around your body image. And yeah, you can go, this is actually, here's my practical advice. Here's me being a guide, a guru. That's what a guru is, isn't it? They're like a spiritual guide, being your guru. Go and follow some body positivity people. Not ones that necessarily trigger you because they're too wacky and saying stupid stuff, but just people who are like, there's this girl I've started following, who generally is very, very good. Begins with M. Mika, someone. Man, what am I going to do? My phone is there recording me. I can't go on my Instagram. Don't think I can do it on my watch. Go search them out. And maybe I'll tag her in the comments on Instagram when I do the post for this podcast. There you go. But yeah, you can go search them out. Different people. And, one last thing. Lots of people who are very anti-diet, they've given themselves eating disorders or disordered eating patterns, poor relationship with food. But they did that by going to this extreme, competing in bodybuilding, doing X, Y, Z. They made themselves look a certain way. Now, this is some physiology for you. There's also an aspect of when you diet extremely, your physiology potentially does change. You might change your set point slightly. You might, now there's also the flip side of you might then put fat back on and more than you lost before, etc., etc. But often when you've got into this extreme shape, you put fat on quickly, but you're still miles away from where you started. And then if you can start to right things, but there is, you become super insulin sensitive, you become more leptin sensitive, your appetite signaling, once you get away from being really super lean, goes a bit back to normal. You've learnt more about your eating, you've got into training, you've built some muscle, blah, 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 all these different things. And you see lots of these individuals where they go, this is me before I started competing. I was a normal girl and I was happy. And then I went bodybuilding and I gave myself a disordered eating. And now look at me now. And I think what a lot of these people forget is I see so many of these kind of activists, anti-diet activists, who are in amazing shape. And most of my clients in my, 10 plus years career would love to look how they look now in this person who is, I just eat intuitively and this, that and the other. And they don't live in a society that judges them differently for looking differently. And that's, on us to change the way society acts towards weight stigma. But that's not going to happen soon. It's just not. So what can we do in the meantime that's proactive? And I think just going, no one should diet, no matter whether your BMI is 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, it's stupid. And we need to find something that's actually going to be helpful to people. And one of those is definitely acceptance, and you're not less worthy because of wherever your body weight is. And it's not making up lies like BMI is completely irrelevant to health, physiological, physical health. But understanding that there's much more to health, and that, yes, there's much more to how you look, happiness than how you look and what you weigh. But, it's happening now that intuitive eating crowds and intuitive eating Facebook groups and anti-diet groups, this, that and the other, and health at every size Facebook groups are literally kicking out their own, ostracizing their own whenever they mention anything about wanting potentially to change their body weight, their body fat levels. So anyway, there is potentially something to be said of maybe going through this process and realizing the sacrifices that will be there, but doing our best to keep people away from getting really, really poor relationships with food, disordered eating, becoming antisocial, anxious, and, increasing social anxiety so that they can't connect with friends and loved ones, etc., which are much more important for, long-term human health and happiness and those kind of things. Yeah, I just wanted to say, that kind of cropped into my head because there's quite a few of these individuals that are super, super anti-diet and super anti any kind of intentional weight loss. And I don't think they realize their privilege where they are. That's a horrible word, isn't it? Privilege. But they have this genetic privilege of them not dieting, them eating whatever they want and being happy, etc., and chilling out at, probably a BMI of 22 and, looking great by fitness industry standards even. They're not shredded, but they're just exactly where most of the women who came to my tour talks would want to be, and going, yeah, girls, just don't bother. And it's like, yeah, it's all right for you to say that. I just wanted to kind of put that point across, that when and it's also another thing I spoke about in my tour talks is, I'm trying to get my BMI between 20 and 25, like ridiculous. Like BMI is just so stupid on an individual level. But so is going, I want abs, or I want to look like this person. So setting goals is difficult. But actually sometimes setting your goal somewhere that is unattainable is the worst thing that you can do. And actually understanding that, okay, I will never be able to maintain that and sustain the effort required to get there. And this is why I talk about, okay, on the way, have a reassessment of what sacrifices you're having to make to get there, and are they worth it? Cool. Right. Bit longer than I expected it to be. Hope it was helpful. Until next time, much love.